In the early dawn of 464 BCE, when the sun had barely crested Mount Taygetus and the Eurotas River still lay cloaked in silver mist, the earth beneath Sparta convulsed with a violence unseen since the days of myth. A cataclysmic earthquake that struck without warning, shattering the unwalled city of red-cloaked warriors into rubble and dust, collapsing the timber-roofed homes of the Spartiates, crushing the Syssitia halls where black broth had steamed moments before, and burying hundreds beneath fallen lintels and cracked marble, while across the valley in Messenia the tremor rippled like a death knell for Lacedaemonian tyranny. For in that instant of chaos, 20,000 Helots, state-owned slaves who had tilled Spartan fields for generations under the lash, outnumbered their masters 10-1, and nursed a hatred forged in centuries of ritual humiliation and cryptire murders, saw the hand of Poseidon himself offering liberation, and they rose as one, seizing pitchforks, sickles, stolen daggers, and whatever bronze they could scavenge from the ruins, marching on the 5 villages that comprised Sparta under the stunned gaze of King Archidamus II, who stood barefoot amid the wreckage of his palace, his crimson cloak torn, rallying the surviving Homaioi with a voice hoarse from dust and grief. The quake had been apocalyptic. Thucydides later wrote that it leveled most houses, killing over 20,000 in Laconia alone, though the true toll was likely higher for the Spartiates, already dwindled to fewer than 8,000 full citizens due to the rigid eugenics of the Agauge and the constant drain of border wars, lost hundreds in a single heartbeat, their wives and children crushed beneath roof tiles, their helot attendants fleeing into the night rather than digging them out. And when the aftershocks finally subsided, the city lay open like a gutted fish, its legendary discipline shattered, its red-cloaked elite reduced to stunned survivors picking through debris for spears and shields. Archidamus, barely 30, son of Zeuxidamus and grandson of Leotychidas, had been drilling his royal guard when the ground split beneath their feet. He emerged from a collapsed barracks with a broken arm, blood streaming from a scalp wound. Yet his first act was not to mourn, but to command, sending riders to the perioikoi towns demanding every able-bodied man, arming boys barely past the Agave, and ordering the remaining Helots, those still loyal or too terrified to flee, to form a cordon around the Acropolis. For even in catastrophe, Sparta's survival depended on the terror that kept its slaves in chains. But the Helots had waited centuries for this moment. In Messenia, where the descendants of the conquered still spoke their own dialect and sang forbidden songs of Aristomenes, the earthquake was a divine signal. Within hours, 20,000 rose under no single leader, but a shared fury, torching granaries, slaughtering overseers, and marching east along the Pamissos River toward Sparta, their numbers swelling with every village they liberated, carrying crude banners stitched from Spartan cloaks dyed in blood, chanting freedom or death in the Messenian tongue. By nightfall on the first day, they had reached the Steniklaras plain, less than 20 miles from the Spartan heartland, and scouts reported their campfires stretching like a necklace of flame across the valley. Archidamus, informed by a trembling perioikoi runner, faced a nightmare. His army was scattered, his city defenseless, and the Helots, usually cowed by the annual declaration of war that legalized their murder, now marched as an army, armed with the desperation of men who had nothing to lose. The king's response was ruthless and brilliant. He evacuated the surviving Spartiates to the fortified hill of the Acropolis, ordered the Helots still under control to dig trenches and raise palisades from the ruins, and sent urgent appeals to the Peloponnesian League, Corinth, Elis, Mantinea, promising land and citizenship to any who came, while simultaneously dispatching spies into the Helot ranks to sow discord, spreading rumors that the revolt would be crushed within days, and all participants crucified along the Eurotas. Yet the Helots pressed on, reaching the outskirts of Sparta by the third day, their vanguard clashing with Spartan skirmishers in the olive grove south of the city, where a perioikoi captain named Phalanthus fell with a sickle through his throat, his red cloak trampled into the mud. The revolt became the Third Messenian War, a 5-year siege that would test Sparta's endurance like no foreign invasion ever had. For months, the Helots encircled the city, cutting supply lines, burning crops, and ambushing foraging parties, while Archidamus, his arm now splintered with bronze, led nightly sorties to burn Helot camps, his elite guard slipping through the darkness like wolves, slitting throats and vanishing before dawn. The Spartiates, reduced to fewer than 5,000 effectives, fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, their women, legendary for their scorn of cowardice, arming themselves with daggers and standing guard on the walls, while the Helots, though numerous, lacked siegecraft and discipline, their assaults repelled by boiling pitch and bronze-tipped arrows. Yet the pressure was relentless. Starvation gnawed at the city, and desertions among the Perioikoi began as families fled to Tegea or Argos. In desperation, Archidamus turned to the one ally he dreaded, Athens, the democratic upstart that had fought Sparta at Plataea, but now shared a common fear of Helot rebellion. The Athenian appeal was a masterstroke of pragmatism. Archidamus sent an embassy under Nicomedes, offering to forgive past grievances if Athens would send hoplites to crush the revolt, and Cimon, son of Miltiades, hero of Marathon and leader of Athens' conservative faction, persuaded the assembly to dispatch 4,000 hoplites under his command, arguing that a Helot victory would destabilize the entire Peloponnese and threaten Athenian interests in the Aegean. The Athenians arrived in the spring of 463 BCE, their owl-emblazoned shields a strange sight beside Spartan lambdas, and together the allied army marched west to confront the Helot host encamped at Ithome, the ancient Messenian fortress that had defied Sparta for 20 years during the Second Messenian War. The siege of Ithome became the revolt's Alamo. 10,000 Helots fortified the mountain, digging trenches, rolling boulders, and fighting with the fury of men defending their homeland, while Cimon's hoplites and Archidamus' Spartiates assaulted the slopes in wave after wave, the bronze clash echoing through the valleys like thunder. For 3 years the siege dragged on. The Helots, led by a shadowy council of elders claiming descent from Aristomenes, repelled every assault, their women and children hurling stones from the ramparts, their warriors fighting with captured Spartan shields. But starvation and disease did what bronze could not. By 460 BCE, the defenders were reduced to eating leather and rats. And when a traitor, a Helot promised freedom by the Spartans, revealed a hidden spring, the end came swiftly. The final assault saw Cimon's Athenians scale the northern wall under cover of darkness, while Archidamus' Spartiates breached the eastern gate, and in the dawn light the Helots fought to the last man, their leaders choosing suicide over recapture, leaping from the cliffs with their families rather than face the lash again. Of the 20,000 who had risen, fewer than 5,000 survived to be re-enslaved, many crucified along the road to Mycenae as a warning, their bodies left for the crows. The aftermath was a bitter betrayal. Athens, having bled for Sparta, demanded concessions, perhaps the expulsion of Cimon's rival Pericles or trade privileges in Laconia, but Archidamus, his city saved but his pride wounded, dismissed the Athenians with cold thanks, refusing to honor the alliance. The snub ignited the First Peloponnesian War, as Athens allied with Argos and Thessaly against Sparta, while Cimon was ostracized for his pro-Spartan stance. Yet Sparta endured, its Helot system reinforced with new garrisons, the cryptia doubled in size, and the earthquake's lessons carved into law. Never again would the city be unwalled, never again would Helots be allowed to gather in such numbers. Archaeologists today uncover the mass graves at Ithome, skeletons with crushed skulls, iron slave collars fused to bone, and the foundations of Archidamus' rebuilt Acropolis, a fortress that would stand until Roman times. The earthquake revolt of 464 BCE was not the end of Sparta, but it was the closest the Red Cloak Empire ever came to annihilation. A 5-year tremor that exposed the fragile foundation of a society built on bronze, blood, and the terrorized labor of 20,000 men who, for one brief moment, nearly toppled the myth of Lacedaemonian invincibility with nothing but the earth's wrath and the courage of the enslaved.